All right, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about the special stats you can get in New Vegas. If you watched my best start video, I mentioned that I'd be going over each one of these and why they are where they are and whatnot. Here's that video. So to start off with, I'm going to mention that I am playing on Tale of Two Wastelands, and in Tale of Two Wastelands, there's a skill called Almost Perfect, or rather, a perk called Almost Perfect. I'm not going to be taking that for a few reasons. One, it kind of trivializes all the min-maxing we're doing here, and two, by the time you get it, it's really not that good. Even if you modded this perk into an earlier level, it's just not that good. So I'm not going to be taking that. With that, let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to start off with Charisma. Each one of these special stats, we're going to cover 3 different parts of it. They buff you in a few different ways, and one of those ways is your skills. The other way is your character directly, and the third way, or the last way, is going to be how they play into your perks. And we'll be covering all 3 of those for each special stat here. And I'll also be covering a few of the perks, not all of them. This video would be too long, but I'll be covering a few of the perks just to get an idea of what we're reaching for. Some of the higher ends of these special stats, we're going to have a few extra points left over, so it's just something to think about. If you wanted a particular perk that was, required a high amount of whatever stats, you can put some extra points into that if you wanted that perk. If you wanted that perk later on in the game. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off with Charisma. Now, Charisma, the way it buffs you, technically it doesn't really buff you. This is the only stat that buffs something else, and that's your followers. That will buff their damage output and their armor. And for your skills, it buffs the barter and the speech skill. And it really only plays a part into a couple of perks, both of which are really bad. Now, I mentioned in my best start video that this perk was pretty much, this stat is pretty much useless, and it is. There's really nothing going for it. If we click down here, you'll notice that the barter and the speech skill, if we bring it all the way down to 1, they will also go down pretty low here. And if you'll notice in that best start video, I actually tagged barter and speech. Now you might ask, well, if barter and speech are so important, why not bring your charisma up? Because there are no perks associated with charisma that are any good, the only benefit you'll get from charisma can just be put directly into your skills. So every time you level up, you get skill points to put. And whatever benefit we'll get from charisma, leveling up the actual stats, can just be had by putting into the skills directly. So we don't actually need this to go very high at all to get the full benefit of barter and speech. That's one of the reasons why I tagged them. And again, barter, if you are on hardcore, is very important for pack rats later on, a little bit later on into the game. Speech is just nice to have. But yeah, and as far as Tale of Two Wastelands is concerned, if you're downloading the base mod, Tale of Two Wastelands, in Fallout 3, you will still have to deal with the percentage chance of passing speech checks. Now, I'm not going to get too far into that. I really don't like that system they had in Fallout 3, mainly because you could just have your charisma down to level 1, try to pass the speech check. Let's say it was 10% chance of passing at level 1. You pick that speech check, it failed. You could just reload that save and then try again until you got it. Like I said, I really don't like that. But for Tale of Two Wastelands, what you can do is download a mod that changes all of the speech checks of Fallout 3 into the style of New Vegas. So if you have, let's say it's a speech check directly, it'll be 50. and you have 50 exactly, you'll be able to pass it. There's no percentage chance in there. The other nice part about that mod is it's not just directly to speech. It's actually it's related to what the event is. So, if you're talking to a doctor or something, it might be like medicine. If you're talking to a shopkeeper, it might be something, like barter, if it has to do with buying and selling or whatever. So it's kind of nice in that it keeps true to, what you're talking about. Uh, so yeah, all those reasons, charisma is just really bad. It's not good to have. And whatever benefit it had in Fallout 3 was just a really bad system of playing the game. I would highly recommend you just swap it over to the New Vegas style of playing and just stick with that. If you did not want to do the New Vegas style of play with the direct numbers as opposed to the percentage chance, I would still recommend Charisma 1 and just, either deal with the fact that you're not going to pass a lot of speech checks, or you can save scum, or in the case of like intense training or whatnot, you can just put points directly into charisma if passing those speech checks is important to you. But yeah. Okay, so moving on to our endurance here. This buffs your poison and your radiation resistance, as well as your hit points, and as well as your healing rate. As far as your skills, it'll give you survival and unarmed. You'd see that there. And there's a little hidden benefit to this, and that's how many implants you can get. Now, I talked about in the best start video a minimum of 7, and oftentimes I'll run 8. That's absolutely true. 7 is for the good implants. I'll generally run 8 just for the extra hit points and the resistances and whatnots. As far as your perks, basically every good perk can be had with like 7 in endurance or below. I will mention one perk, and that is the implant GRX, and that is directly at 8. You need 8 endurance to get that perk. You cannot take 7 endurance, get the implant, and then have 8 endurance and then get that perk. It doesn't work like that. You actually need a base of 8. I don't put the endurance at 8 just because of that perk. I actually think Implant GRX is a little bit overrated, but because I know there's still quite a few new players out there, it's a very convenient perk to have. Like I said, I won't get too much into it right now, but just know that the best perk you can have in the endurance, or the one with the highest requirement, I should say, that's still pretty decent, is endurance 8. As far as getting it higher, if you start with a base of 8, you'll get the implant, which will get you to 9, and you can always take buff out in the game to get you to an effective max 10. Now, buff out in this game is very plentiful. It's everywhere, especially if you follow my guide on complete dead money, you'll have an infinite amount of it for free. But even if you don't, buff out's one of the most common chems in the game. And you can basically just take this to have an effective max stat of endurance all the time. So, yeah, for those reasons, endurance, minimum 7, most likely 8. But yeah, we'll go ahead and just put it at 8 and then work with these 6 skill points we have left. And we'll just move on from here. Okay, so moving on to our strength stat here. Strength affects your melee damage and your carry weight to the character directly. For your skills, it affects the melee weapon skill. And as a hidden little effect, there's a stat in the game referred to as weapon handling. For every firearm you get, requires a certain amount of strength to use effectively. And all that really means is that if you meet the requirement, you won't lose any accuracy. When you have less than the amount needed, you'll have a small penalty to your accuracy. I believe it's 20% per point. It might be 10% actually. But considering, if let's say a weapon is 7 and you have 6 strength, that's negative to the accuracy. Again, it's a percentage of what it already is, so it's not that bad. Oftentimes I'll run weapons, that I don't have the strength for, and just kind of put up with the accuracy penalty. So long as it doesn't affect the damage directly, it's really not that big of a deal. but you still want to keep an eye on something like that for later on in the game. Now, in the best start guide, I mentioned a minimum of 7. This is if you're playing the vanilla and the modded games. Now, with 7 strength, eventually you'll get the spineless perk from Old World Blues, which will bring you up to 9. And with the strength implant, will bring you up to 10. And that will get you, yeah, you'll have basically a max stat into strength permanently, not an effective max stat like the endurance with the buff out. But in Tale of Two Wastelands, there's actually an extra perk point you can put into this from a quest called Those. Now, in Those, you speak to a guy named Dr. Lesko. He sends you on a little mission, and depending on how you play that, at the end of it, you'll have the option for an extra point into strength or perception. I would always go strength in that quest. So effectively, you can get to max strength starting from 6. And just to recap, that's 1 point for the quest Those, 1 point for the implant, and then 2 for the spineless perk at the end of Old World Blues. So that is 10. You could technically go even lower than that and have that buff out affect the strength as well, since you're already going to be doing that for the endurance. But again, this min-maxing is really a balance of, how difficult is the early game versus, what you can get away with in the late game for your perks and whatnot. So I really wouldn't go any lower than 6, honestly 7, especially if you're in vanilla or modded. 7 is a good place. If you really want to push yourself, you can do 6. But again, this is for Tale of Two Wastelands. Vanilla and modded, just stick with 7. Especially with your first couple playthroughs, you'll be fine. We've got more than enough perk points to work with down here at 4 left. So, that should be fine. Okay. As far as your perks themselves, every good perk with strength can be had at level 7 or below. So we're not going to worry about something at 9 or 10 that we're going to miss out on. That's fine. Just 7 or below is good. So with that, let's move on. Okay, moving on to luck. The first part of luck that buffs your character directly is going to be to your critical chance. For every point you have, you gain 1% critical chance. For your skills, it actually buffs every single skill. Every 2 points, you get 1 skill to each thing here. And the little hinted benefit is the casinos. Now, if you saw in that best start guide, we basically gambled out the casinos with, 8 luck, I believe. I was playing on Tale of Two Wastelands. As far as your perks go with this, there's really only one perk to watch out for, and that is the Better Criticals perk. And you get that with the luck of 6, so that's really not an issue. Where in that best start guide, I told you to start with minimum of 7, more tthan likely 8, so that's not an issue. But just be careful with Better Criticals because you do need a minimum of 6 perception. We're going to talk about perception here in a second, but short story is we're going to have 6 perception. That's not going to be an issue. Luck, not too much else to say here other than how you can increase it to your max level. Now in the vanilla and the modded game, I would highly recommend you stick with 8 luck. You can get away with 7 luck early if you get the Naughty Nightwear, which is a pair of clothing that you can wear to get you a temporary of 8. You then gamble out those casinos. Whenever you take it off, though, and put real equipment on, it'll go back down to 7. Now, with the implant, it'll bring it up to 8, and with the lucky shades, it'll bring it up to a temporary of 9, so long as you're wearing those lucky shades. Now, some people don't mind, dealing with that negative 1% critical chance, or if there ever was a time to, put intense training onto something, it might be that luck. But if you don't want to deal with that, vanilla and modded, just go ahead and do luck 8. The implant will get you up to 9, and then always wear those lucky shades, and you'll be at an effective 10 basically. So you'll have a maxed out luck there for any kind of crit build you want to do. And even if you don't want to do a crit build, just having 8 luck is just good. Even just for those casinos, there's really no better way to make money early in New Vegas than gambling those out. So Tale of Two Wastelands, I almost forgot to mention here. You can not only get the lucky shades and the implant, but you can also get the lucky 8 ball from a guy named Time Bomb from a quest called Big Town, Big Trouble in Fallout 3. Once you complete that quest, he'll give you the item. And I actually like this item mainly because it doesn't take up one of your apparel slots. It's just an item you have in your inventory. So you can wear other things. You're not stuck to those glasses. I will say though that if you're in Fallout 3, you can get the lucky shades in a different place. You don't have to do the Legion stuff to get the lucky shades. There's a building right next to Tenpenny's Tower. You can just walk in and grab it. It's not tied to any quests or anything. So with all of that, you would get the lucky shades, the 8 ball, and the implant, and you could start with 7 and get to 10. Or you can do what I normally do: start with 8, get the implant. Eventually, you'll get the lucky 8 ball, and that'll be a max of 10. And what that'll do is it'll free up your apparel slots to wear something else besides those lucky shades. To give you an example of what you could wear, in Fallout 3, you can get the ghoul mask. The ghoul mask is a great item. It just allows you to avoid combat with any ghouls. You can equip any other type of sunglasses if they look cool to you. You're not stuck to those lucky shades. You can do other stuff. So it's really up to you if you're playing Tale of Two Wastelands, but I'd recommend 8. It makes the gambling easier. Especially when you go into dead money, you'll have the implants to 9 as opposed to starting from 7. Having the implant at 8, it'll make the gambling just a little bit harder in dead money if you do that one. So, yeah, with all that being said, start with the luck of 8, and that's going to be all across the board. And let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so moving on to perception here. It buffs your character directly by giving you a little extra distance when it comes to sensing your enemies in the compass. You'll notice in your compass, you see the little red lines, which tells you there's an enemy, somewhere in that direction. With a higher perception, you'll see that red line sooner. That's really the buff to your character. As far as your skills, it'll buff the explosives, the energy weapons, and the lockpick. Most people get this confused with science, thinking that, intelligence, thinking that intelligence will buff your energy weapons. It's actually perception. So if you're going to do, an energy weapon build, definitely think about perception more than intelligence. But as far as how far you put it, really 5 is all you need. Once we get that implant, we'll get to level 6, and 6 will give us access to 2 perks. One of those perks was better criticals, like I was talking about a second ago with luck. So that's, what is it, 6 luck, 6 perception, and the other is light step. Now, light step requires 6 perception and 6 agility. And again, we'll talk about agility here in a second, but short version again, we will have 6 agility. That's not an issue. Light step is one of the best perks in the game. Really, it's a game changer, especially in Tale of Two Wastelands. I can't tell you how many times I've died to just random traps and mines on the floor and whatnot. It really does change everything. Oh, and by the way, light step doesn't just affect things like stuff that you can step on. It'll affect like lasers. If you're in Old World Blues doing that stealth suit quest, where you kind of have to navigate around the lasers that are being pointed around, you can just walk right through them. Um, Light step literally affects anything that can be triggered, like from your presence, from some kind of inanimate object, like a trap or a pressure plate or a scale or something like that. So and also those lasers. So yeah, it really is a nice perk. I recommend that perk every single playthrough, every time. Plus, we just have the points to do it. So perception 5, implant will get you to 6. And yeah, 6 will get you the requirements for both the better criticals and the light step. So that's really all you need there. Yeah, that's it. Moving on. Okay, moving on to intelligence here. For your character's direct buff, it will affect your skill rate. So you can see here, if I move this down, it's half a point of your skill rate for every point of your intelligence. And all that means is that when you level up, you're going to get this many skills to put into your skill brackets here. If it's an odd number like this, where it's a 0.5, you'll get 12 skill points, one level, and then the next level you'll have 13. So it'll alternate, 12 point, 12, 13, 12, 13. That's how that works. If you get like intelligence 4, it's just 12 flat the whole way. Now, as far as which skills this buffs, you're looking at medicine, repair, and science. And as far as your perks go, there's really only 2 perks we need to think about here with intelligence. The first perk is comprehension. This one I take every time. It's just that good. I'm not going to say it's one of the best perks in the game, but let's say, top 10, where maybe this would be like 9 or something like that. It's definitely very solid all the way around. It really helps with those early speech checks. And the extra point you get for the skill books makes it to where you don't have to have a super high intelligence to, get very high or maxed out stats here in the skills. A quick note on maxing out your skills here. You don't have to max everything out. I think maxing this whole skill, every skill is a little bit, I don't want to say overrated, whatever you would call it. It's really just for bragging rights to yourself. It doesn't do much of anything, especially if you're locked into a build where, let's say I was doing, an explosives build with a secondary and guns. What am I leveling up energy weapons for? It's kind of pointless. If you're playing in the base game, your level cap, is 50, and that's with all of the DLC. If you're playing Tale of Two Wastelands, your level cap is 60. What did I say? I'm sorry. The base game, the vanilla, and the modded essentials, your level cap is 50. In Tale of Two Wastelands, your level cap is 60. So even if, let's say, you were building, explosives and guns, and you had your intelligence all the way down to, like, let's say 3, to where when you get the implant it was 4, and then you got comprehension, all you have to do is look for some skill books within New Vegas, and that'll help get whatever skills you need to wherever they want for the perks you want. Getting max stats, I really don't think is an efficient way to play the game. It's, like I said, just bragging rights. But again, even if you're not skill book hunting, 4 is plenty. 12 skill points per level is plenty. Again, just be careful what you're leveling. For the best start guide, obviously, I wouldn't do anything that isn't neutral. So, no energy weapons, no explosives, guns maybe, lockpick yes, medicine yes, melee no, repair not really, kind of, sort of, science, pick between lockpick or science, sneak not really, speech yes, and then survival and unarmed, those aren't neutral enough. So when you make that best start save, and then you want to play again, you're going to start from wherever with, barter, and you're going to start with neutral skills. So as far as maxing your skills, though, don't worry about that. At least not in this playthrough. I'll show you how to do it, in some other playthrough, or, ways to make it easier without just like maxing intelligence. I think you give up too much elsewhere to max out your skills that don't always do much for you. Especially if you're set into a certain set of perks that doesn't include the other thing, like, again, guns or energy weapons. But yeah, as far as your intelligence goes, minimum 3. And again, this is if you're not playing hardcore. If you're not playing hardcore, 3 to where you get the implant is going to give you 4, and 4 is going to get you comprehension, and that is perfect. That's all you need for non-hardcore playthroughs. For hardcore playthroughs, you're going to want a minimum or a base of 4, so that when you get the implant, you're going to have 5, and 5 is going to get you access to Pack Rat. And Pack Rat, like I said in that best start guide, top 3 best perks in the game, if not the best. You want this basically every time. Now, as far as any other perks that you can get in intelligence, they really don't matter. They're not very good. Like I said, just 2 perks, and that's all you need to worry about. And again, especially if your first playthrough, do not concern yourself with like maxing everything out to where it looks cool. It's just bragging rights. It doesn't mean anything. Focus on what that build is going to be. If you're focusing on your best start save, focus on the most neutral of your skills. That's going to be barter, lockpick, medicine, speech, and maybe guns, just for the early part of the game. So, yeah, with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and set this to 4 intelligence, and we got 2 points to go, so let's move on. Okay, last stat we're going to be looking at here is agility, and for your character directly, this is going to affect the draw speed and your holster speed, so how fast you pull out a weapon and how fast you put it away, as well as your reload speed. As far as your skills go, it's going to affect your guns as well as your sneak skill. And as far as your perks go, there's actually a couple of interesting ones here. We need a minimum, a base, no matter which version, no matter what difficulty, of 5, so that when we get the implant, it'll be 6. Now, if you remember earlier, I said perception needed to be 6 for light step. Well, it's the same with agility. Agility and perception at 6 is the requirements for light step, at least for the stats, or excuse me, at least for the special stats. You still need the level to get that perk, but yeah, like I said, one of the best perks in the game. So all across the board, a minimum of 5. And some other perks to consider are Slayer. Now, Slayer, I wouldn't necessarily call it neutral, considering it is a melee unarmed type thing. But as far as builds go, melee and unarmed is one of the best. It's definitely the best secondary part of your build. So let's say, for example, you were going with a tank build where your primary stat was going to be something like, power armor with, say, guns, and that was your big thing there. You're this tanky guy that shoots regular guns, not energy weapons, not explosives, but guns. A good secondary to have when you're in a tight corner or something, or your reload is too slow or whatever. You can pull out a melee weapon and kind of finish the fight that way. That is a very effective way to play this game. Melee specifically, not unarmed, but melee, I believe, is probably the best secondary build in the game. As far as if you were going with a primary build melee, it's still very good, but just know it takes time to build into that stuff. People are going to be shooting at you, and when you're melee, you have to run at them to be able to hit them, so you're going to take a lot of damage. But early game, that's not really a good idea. Later on in the game, though, it's fine when you get better armors and whatnot, and more perks. But yeah, something to look out for in agility to keep in your back pocket, again, because we've got 2 perk points left, and we'll talk about here, what else we can put them into. The short version is agility. You can bring it all the way up to 7 with those extra 2 perk points. That will give you, let me think here, agility, yeah, 5 base, plus the implant is 6, will give you light step. If I go base 6, and then I get the implant, I'm at 7 agility. And 7 agility will get you Slayer. Now, there's another one to consider a little bit higher up called Tunnel Runner. Tunnel Runner, I wouldn't call it a meta perk. It's really not anything that you have to have like any of these other perks I'm talking about. I will say, though, this is one of the most fun perks. Tunnel Runner plus the implant that you can get from Old World Blues, which makes it to where your crouch speed is faster, plus Tunnel Runner, and then you're wearing light armor. You can fly through a lot of this game. I mean, you can definitely move faster than you can your character just sort of walking. With your weapon holstered, you can move faster than that crouching. So it makes some interesting gameplay when you're doing, like, say, a silent sniper build. You pick somebody off and then you kind of displace and move somewhere else, and you're moving super fast and they can't keep up with you. It's definitely one of the more fun ways to play this game. But again, not necessary. It's definitely not meta. It's just something to think about later on. Now, as far as what to do with these 2 perk points, I was trying to leave a little bit open for you, the player. I didn't want you to have to follow me directly, like to the T every single time. But if you wanted to, that's fine as well. If you remember in that video, I did a little screenshot of, which version of the game, which difficulty, what you can move around, what not to move around. This one, this is kind of base. Like, don't go really any lower than this, and then decide what you want. I would highly recommend agility again for Slayer and Tunnel Runner. And also, one more thing that I forgot to mention at the end of the DLC Lonesome Road, you actually get to put a perk point, or excuse me, you get to put 1 point into any one of these special stats that you want. So this 2 points left is actually 3 points left once you complete that DLC. So if you wanted to, you could go agility 6, 7, and then once you're done with Lonesome Road, that will be agility 8. If I put that point into agility from Lonesome Road. Now, keep in mind, if I get the implant, that is agility 9, right? So agility 7 with the implant is 8. And with the 1 point you get from Lonesome Road is 9. And that'll just make your reloading and holstering speeds a lot faster. You could also consider just sticking with 5 and putting the extra in strength. Again, a little bit inefficient because of how many points you get from Lonesome Road with like the spineless trait. So I'd stay away from strength. Endurance is really fine where it's at. If you wanted to, you didn't want to have to bother with using buff out to get up to max level, you could go endurance 9, so that when you got the implant, it'll just be a flat 10 permanent all the time. You could also go 8, or no, actually, no, this is max where it is. You could also go, let's see. You could also go intelligence 5 just to give you a few more extra skill points so that you don't have to go hunting around for as many of the skill books as you don't have to go for as many of the skill books. Just makes the gameplay a little bit more convenient. You can go with the agility 6 with the implant, gets you 7 for the Slayer, and that's really the I would say the best perk of that tree. The most efficient perk, definitely in the agility tree at the highest level, would be that Slayer. Again, Tunnel Runner is just for fun; it's not needed. But yeah, so really consider your options here. You have 3 points left. You know, I usually just do agility just because I know I don't need anything anywhere else. And with this setup, at least in the Tale of Two Wastelands, we will have, let's see here, that strength again because we get that extra point. And then we could potentially go like this to where we have max strength and effective max endurance through the use of buff outs. We'll have max agility, and then we have max luck, which is basically all the best stats in the game. Intelligence is not that important, and perception is not that important either. Again, if it wasn't for light step, I would actually put this lower, but I really, really like that perk, so that stays where it is. Charisma never goes higher, and intelligence, at least as far as your skill points go, you don't need anything more than 4. Again, so take your pick. Are you playing on hardcore? If not, you get you get an extra point besides all that other stuff. So you can think about putting that into, let's say, strength, because you're not playing Tale of Two Wastelands or something like that, right? So yeah, take your pick. Again, I'll leave the little clip of all the perk points and where they are for each version of the game, hardcore on or off. So yeah, for me, it's going to be 6. Is it 4? Yeah, I believe this is what it was. Yeah, 6, 5, 8. Yeah, 4. So that's 5. Yeah. Yeah, that's for me. And this, like I said, we get a couple extra points here and there. So we'll basically have max stats, at least the important ones. And yeah, that's going to do it for the special stats. If I missed anything, or if you have any questions, let me know. I'll try to answer in the comments as best as I can. Yeah, next we're going to be moving on to, I guess we can talk about our skills in the next video. We can, yeah, we'll probably do that. So if you like what you saw here, think about subscribing. I appreciate your time. Again, if you got any questions, let me know. And yeah, that'll be it. Appreciate it. Have a good one.